Hi everyone and welcome to 5 Minutes on Writing. My name is Deanna Thomas and I'm talking to you today about paragraphs. So the main theory with paragraphs is that each paragraph should have a point. And what that really means is that there's a paragraph level organization to each paper that you should pay attention to. So each individual paragraph conveys a specific point, but then the union of all the paragraphs builds your storyline. So there's a paragraph level organization for each section of your paper that you should be able to kind of distill. So even if you've already gone ahead and started writing, try to go back and see what your paragraphs are, which points each paragraph is making, and try to distill it down to an outline at the paragraph level of your paper to clarify your narrative. And then to give you a little bit more detail and some examples, I just want to start with different kinds of paragraphs and how you set them up. So the most rare kind of paragraph that you will probably use is a block quote. Block quotes are kind of there for two potential reasons. One is that you're trying to give the devil his due and then rip him apart. So a lot of the time we'll use block quotes in order to kind of set up our opponent in terms of who we're arguing against. So some quote from a paper or author that you disagree with or that you think is wrong. Another reason we use block quotes is because we want to give the angel his voice. So when we find a particularly well-expressed statement from another author with which we entirely agree, but that's not a routine explanation in other people's words, then it makes sense sometimes to use that particularly well-phrased paragraph or quote. And we're all familiar with those sorts of paragraphs and quotes. I'm sure you've all heard, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we deserve our dinner, but from their regard to their own self-interest, from Adam Smith. And everybody knows that Hayek called the price system a marvel. Those sorts of things are kind of expressions that are really well phrased because they reveal something specific about the point that you're trying to make. So when that's the case, then you use the original author's exact words in a block quote. Now, with all other types of paragraphs, what you're doing is really trying to introduce one specific argument. So if it's not a block quote, what you're doing still is trying to convey something novel or interesting to the reader. What you should know for the paragraph level organization is that what you want to do ultimately is have a more or less complete discussion of one point in each paragraph. So don't let a paragraph go by in which you don't tell the reader something that she doesn't currently know or believe. You want to introduce something novel, whether that's empirical evidence supporting a previous theoretical or conceptual point or the original theoretical or conceptual point that you're making that's novel and interesting. It's also important to note, however, that you want to make sure that your paragraphs are well contained. So don't let your thoughts run on but beyond one paragraph. Paragraphs are really like punctuation in poetry. You'll occasionally want to pause to shift the tone or give a break, and that's when you use a paragraph end. Finally, you want to make sure that the last sentence of your paragraph is kind of a street talk encapsulation of what you've been saying. So a summary, a very captivating or easier to understand summary of the main point of the paragraph. And overall, paragraphs should not be too long or too short, but kind of hit a sweet spot in terms of length. So don't just draw on forever. Now, ultimately, a paragraph is no different than your overall paper in the sense that what you're doing is basically you're going to tell the reader what you're going to tell them, you're going to tell them, and then you're going to tell them what you told them. So your street talk encapsulation last sentence is really you're telling the reader what you just told them in the paragraph. So as you can see, paragraphs are kind of a microcosm of your paper. They are individualized, argumentative points, logical steps in your argument that should be well contained, short and sweet, and kind of repeat ultimately the main argument you're making in each paragraph. I want to encourage you to go ahead and if you haven't written a section of your paper, kind of start with a paragraph level outline of the paper section. If you've already written all your sections, go back and see if your paragraphs conform to these stipulations. Is it true that you have one point per paragraph? Is it true that they're well contained? Are you running on or not? And then try to write down what your logical argument is here, really, in the section, and see whether or not there are gaps maybe in your argument where you're missing a step that you can insert another paragraph, or whether maybe there's a part that's redundant that can be taken out. With that, I'm going to leave you, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday.